go back a fair way, and I've done some of her courses, and it's been fabulous. And Padma is fabulous. We all know that, don't we? Okay, let us begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land, and past, present, respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. This evening, we're delighted to welcome again our very own Padma, a loyal Jung Society presenter. Padma will bring us an extraordinary dance presentation, considering questions such as, what is the importance of the world of nature earth? How is this perceived in the dance and philosophy of Shiva's dance? How can dance help bridge the self-nature divide of our times? Padma is an acclaimed dancer and philosopher who is a pioneer in reviving the ancient practice of the divine feminine in Indian dance tradition. She helps people seeking to reclaim their sacred selves by generously sharing her lifetime's knowledge in sacred Indian dance, philosophy and ritual. Padma offers individual transformational programs, well as group classes and intensive. Other than a lifetime in dance, Padma has studied Indian philosophy, yoga and ritual, marital arts under traditional lineages. She has a Master of Choreography, specialising in movement analysis. Padma's presentation will go for about an hour, and then we'll have a short break and move on to discussion and questions. So as you can see at the back of the room, we have a supper that you're most welcome to have. Note that we'll be recording this event for later reference. And if you're here on Zoom, please remain muted while Padma is on. Use Zoom chat for comments, and we'll open up later for discussion. Here's lovely Padma. Thank you very much. Thank you. Annoy us. Anyway, enjoy Padma's presentation.
Namaste, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm very honored, and it's a pleasure to be here to share some reflections on dance. So I know Jean said it's a dance performance, and I thought, oh dear. I would have loved it to be a dance performance because I'm definitely better at dance performing than dance talking. So, but I am going to do something a bit challenging for those of us who are dancers, and that is speaking about dance. And so I hope that you will meet me at least halfway. I just want to begin with a prayer and acknowledgement of the deities of this land, the deities of earth, of the earth. So I'm going to begin with a prayer to Goddess Earth, and I'm going to do it as I go through the prayer. Sadly, I didn't think of using music because it is very difficult. Jean told me this is going to go online, and YouTube, it's very difficult with music on YouTube. So I just thought it's probably safer not to use music in recordings. So let me just do this. It's an invocation to Earth, and it's the way in which we begin our traditional performances for ages. So, and welcome to everybody on Zoom too. So this is a challenge. So I'll say the Sanskrit line and then I'll say the English line as I'm doing it. So it's Vishnu Shakti Samutpanne, So you who are the Shakti, which is energy, the force, the strength of Vishnu, and that is the deity, the divinity that maintains Earth and all the processes of Earth. Vishnu Shakti Samutpanne. Vishnu Shakti Samutpanne. Vishnu Shakti Samutpanne. Chitravarne Mahitale. The one who is filled with multiplicity, with many colors. Chitravarne Mahitale. One who's expansive. Chitravarne, with multiplicity. Mahitale. Chitravarne Mahitale. Aneka Ratna Sampanne, the one who is the custodian of precious stones and gems, is under the ground. Aneka Ratna Sampanne. Aneka Ratna Sampanne. Aneka Ratna Sampanne. Bhumi Devi Namostude. To this earth, we pray. Samudra Vasane Devi, the one who holds the ocean as her ornament round her hips. Samudra Vasane Devi. Samudra Vasane Devi. Parvata Sthanamandali, one who holds mountains at her breast. Parvata Sthanamandali. Parvata Sthanamandali. Natyam Karishya Bhudevi. As I dance on you, Natyam Karishya Bhudevi. As I dance on you. Pada Ghata Samasami. Forgive me if I hurt you with my feet. So this is how we, for many centuries, this is how we have always begun the dance. And I think everything that I want to say in my talk is actually in that invocation. The body, our body is earth, her oceans are in us, her mountains are on the body. So the body is the landscape of the earth. And the first earth begins in our body. And when we connect with our body, then we connect with earth. And when we don't connect with our body, there is no connection possible with earth because it starts here. The body is made of the soil of the earth. So welcome again to this talk. And as I said, dance always happens because it goes beyond words. And so to bring dance back into words, and now I'm a dancer, so I'm going to say it's a reductionist exercise to make dance into words. And what I would like to start with is by talking about what do I mean when I say Shiva's dance? So when I said, will Shiva's dance help us reconnect with nature? I was very intentional about that word Shiva's dance because I was speaking about dance that is used for a particular purpose, that is of a particular form, and that has what I call a certain intelligence and a technology, which is Shiva's dance. So as you know, we have many kinds of dancing today. And we also have, I feel like we have a very difficult relationship with dance in general. a lot of people will say, I don't dance. I remember a workshop that I did in Melbourne once, and there was a group of people there, and there was an academic who was a very eminent academic in goddess studies, and he came into the workshop, and he was sitting, and all of us were getting ready to do it, and I said to him, well, aren't you going to join us? And he was completely outraged. He said, I don't dance. And it was almost, maybe he didn't mean it, but I felt as if he was saying, how dare you assume I dance? You know, what I do is something more important. So, there is that sense that dance is something frivolous. And of course, we consider all of the arts in the times we live in as recreation. And we say, and in these times, in the crisis, they've even become non-essential. So all over the world, so many of us artists for whom this is it's our life, it's our passion, suddenly we are told it's non-essential. What you do, what your passion is, what your work is completely non-essential. So we're living in a really strange times, difficult times for the art. And yet, if you look at ancient cultures all over the world, the reason why we know about them is because of their artistic manifestations, what remains of their art, whether it's in beautiful buildings or artifacts, or what we know about their dance and music. And that's what we say, wow, that was a great civilization. And here we are at this moment in our history where we're actually saying that art is non-essential. So among the non-essential arts, dance is more non-essential than many of the other arts. And that's because dance has this aura of virtuosity, of mastery, and I also feel it's because it is about the body. And over many centuries, we have a very difficult relationship with the body. And I think this is the world over. Almost every philosophy, every spirituality, every culture has said that the body is the problem. And transcending the body is the solution. In many different ways, this has been said. And so I feel like dance, which really brings us back to the body as the site of expression, it becomes a dangerous thing, becomes a problematic thing. And so I feel like what we have done is we have also brought dance into this domain of narrative. We have brought dance into something that illustrates music. And I'm not saying, whenever I say something, it's not because I say anything is bad. I just said the goddess loves multiplicity, Chitra Varne, all the colors. Let there be many colors, but let there also be a color of dance that is a spiritual inquiry, a philosophical inquiry. And this role of dance as something that goes to where words can't go, something that goes to the experience of the unknowable. So it's not just unknown, because when you say unknown, there is an assumption that it'll be known, but the unknowable. So dance as that movement of the unknowable, the dance as alchemy, as mystery, as something that makes our mind uncomfortable, because our mind can't quite get around it. And we need to kind of open up some other dimensions in our consciousness to actually just be with dance. It's never going to be something you understand, but it is something you sense, it's something you feel. And that role of dance has become increasingly constrained. And we have, am I okay for the Zoom? And so we have this, you can all hear me? Okay. So we have this movement where dance has also become something that is instrumental. So we use dance to illustrate music. We use dance to tell a story. We use dance as therapy. We use dance for health. But dance for itself, dance because it is a philosophy in and of itself, dance because it is an inquiry in and of itself, is something that is very rarely found. And it's something that those of us who do it have to really contend with a demand to explain, put it into words. If it's not a word, then it doesn't exist. If you can't explain it, if you can't bring it into language, then it doesn't exist. But at the same time, I think in almost all the philosophies about the divine, we say that, at least definitely in the Indian philosophy, we say the divine is unknowable. The Brahman in India is, we say it's unknowable, cannot be described. It can only ever be said that it is, the divine is not light, it's not darkness, it's not this, it's not that. And yet there are thousands and thousands of texts written about the Brahman, who is indescribable. And so the earliest invocations of the divine was movement, was dance. And in fact, I've read in some places people saying that it was through the dancing bodies that the sculptures of the deities came. And that's why in India, every god, and I think it's not just in India, in many cultures, the gods dance. They are dancing. And we never stop and think, why are they all dancing? Why is it that in so many different traditions, dance is something that was always this manifestation or expression of the divine? So that is the kind of dance that I'm speaking of here when I speak of Shiva's dance. And what I'd like to do is to go a little bit more into what is Shiva's dance in Indian culture? What do we Shiva's dance? So before I go into that, I just want to say a couple of characteristics. It doesn't matter, even if it is a dancing that we are very popular dance, like Bollywood dance, or no matter how much you try to slave dance to narrative or music, there is still quality in dance more than just that linear relationship. It is something more than just that linear relationship to the story. Like there is escapes that slavery of that linear relationship, to music or to story. And there's quality of dance that is always there. At least that's what I feel. It's always there in dance. It is saying something. It is manifesting. Not just, not just about, but it's giving something. The manifesting. When we come into Shiva's dance, becomes why there is dance, why dance is brought into there is dance. So let me tell you a story from the Natya Shastra, which is a 4,000-year-old text on Indian dance. It's, of course, dance is older than 4,000 years, but the text, the earliest dates are about 4,000 years old. There were apparently other texts on dance, but they've been lost. But Natya Shastra, it's an amazing text. And it really gives us a clue about not just the dance, but about the philosophy itself. What is the philosophy that comes through dancing? What is the nature of philosophy? What does this philosophy propose about the nature of the divine? What does it propose about body? What does it propose about consciousness? What does it propose about our relationship to earth? All of this beautifully in the Natya Shastra. So the story is that it is the sage Bharata who is attributed as the first teacher of dance, the first person who received dance, which actually first is Natya, which is a dramatic performance. So it's not just the dance, it was a dramatic performance. So he gets all the sages together and everybody, and they create the first dramatic performance. And the first performance is a story called The Churning of the Ocean. And in the story, there are the gods who are called the Suras and the Asuras, and they're called demons, which is very sad. I think that's just our duality paradigm. But Asura simply means they are not yet gods. So they're on the, they're somewhere along the spectrum. They're not yet divine. It's not like they're divine. So they need the two of them churn the ocean, and they're churning the ocean to get the nectar of consciousness, again, very prevalent. Reality was always on time, because life birth happens in present future, and time is the source of the mind. When there is time, there is mind. And immortality, in a fundamental way, means freedom from time, freedom from that lens of the mind. And so it's not living forever. It is just the present, the infinity, eternity of presence, the present moment. So they're churning this ocean to get this nectar. And the mountain, there is a mountain called Meru, which becomes a big churning stick. Now the mountain again is a very popular signal of the goddess is called the mountain, it's called the body. So the body, the mountain, and then a snake called Vasuki is put around the waist or so of the mountain. And the snake again, non-linear, the snake that lives underworld and on the earth. And the suras and the asuras are churning this ocean on both sides. And out of the ocean emerges all these different deities. So Lakshmi comes, for example, and she is the goddess of wealth, prosperity, worldly, life of work. And then Kamadenu, the wish-fulfilling cow, all our wishes being. And then there is Kubera, who is the deity of money, power, influence. And they all sort of emerge from this ocean, but they keep churning because what they're looking for is not all that. They're looking for the nectar of immortality. And finally, the nectar comes out. There's a lot of stories that happen along the way, but the nectar comes out. These were all-night performances, so they had the whole night to talk about all the different people that came up. But finally, they get to the nectar. And now there's a problem because the suras don't think that the asuras really deserve the nectar because they're not really divine and they don't really deserve the nectar. So they call Vishnu, who's the maintainer of nature, life, universe, and they say, well, look, you've got to solve this problem for us. And Vishnu transforms himself into Mohini, a dancer. And Mohini, the word means someone who allures, someone who seduces, someone who overwhelms, delusion. So she transforms herself into this dancer and she starts dancing with this nectar. The asuras get completely distracted. They get totally overwhelmed by her beauty, by the beauty of the dance. And in the meantime, she's pouring through the dance, she's pouring the nectar to the suras. And so the asuras miss out on their chance at immortality. And so here's this amazing role of dance in this story. So dance, and so some people have used the story to say, see what dance does. It will distract you. You will miss the nectar of immortality because of dancing. But what they forget is it's the same dance that delivered the nectar to the gods because they had a different relationship with that dance. Whereas the asuras had the same dance, they had a relationship of distraction, of entertainment, of being, seduced and all of that. And they lost sight of what the dancing was actually delivering, what the dance was about. So you can choose both sides. You can say dance is, and as people do, even in the Natya Shastra, on the one hand, they will say, oh, dance is vinoda. It is an amusement. It's an entertainment. It's an ornamentation. But then they will also say dance doesn't depend on anything. It doesn't need music. It doesn't need poetry. It doesn't need story. And so in the first Natya, apparently there was no dance. There was just story. And they take this performance and they go to Shiva. And Shiva says, hey, but there's something missing here. So they had speech. They had philosophical, spiritual, modality, speech and talk. They had action, vigorous action, which is Arabati. So martial arts, for example, in Indian martial arts comes from that sort of type of movement. And they had, as I said, and then Shiva said, but there's something missing. And I'm going to teach you what's missing because it's what I do with my consort at twilight. So twilight, that liminal time between day and night. It's what I do with my consort. And I'm going to teach this. And it something that only women can do. And it's very simple. It's very simple. It has to be done with great simplicity, and it's called Kaishiki. So let me just say another story about where Kaishiki comes, this dance. So dance is of the nature of Kaishiki. So where does it come? I'm sharing through stories because it's so much more than better than me telling you what is dance, because this is how it's told in the Nat Shastra, through the story. So in another story, there is a battle going on, and Vishnu is just about, he's battling these demons who are actually, the names of these demons are attributes of the mind. So the names are things like confusion or sentimentality, or, so these are the names of the demons if you look at the Sanskrit words. So they are all kind of attributes of a mental consciousness. And Vishnu is battling these demons, and in the middle, just as he's got his bow and arrow and he's about to release the arrow, he pauses and he ties his hair. That moment is the dance. That is the Kaishiki. So dance is that moment of spaciousness, that moment of knowingness, just from your that intimacy battle. So that movement of tying the hair is the nature of dance, of Kaishiki. Is Shiva's dance. In the text, Shiva's powerful, that brings joy, that is uh, swabhava, which means people love, it is so natural for people to love dance. So dance is something people just love. It's something that people just relate to without thinking too much, without analyzing too much. It is used in ritual, it's used in celebration. And because aesthetic, anything artistic is about karma or pleasure. And so we now come to the bad, the vision of almost all spiritual philosophies, which is pleasure, which, karma has got a terrible name, terrible reputation, certainly in Indian philosophy and in, different names. We all, I think, almost all religious spiritual philosophies have a problem with pleasure. And, pleasure is the villain, pleasure is sort of devilish, and pleasure is what we need to master, to conquer. So here's a story about Kama. Kama, or Kamadeva, this god of love, he disturbed Shiva's penance. So Shiva was sitting in meditation, and poor Parvati, his consort, was trying to get his attention. And so Kamadeva thought, let me help her. And he went, shot arrow of love at Shiva. So when Shiva was disturbed, even Shiva, even the great Shiva, sitting in thousands of years of meditation, was disturbed, and he realized that something had come his focus and concentration, and he opens his third eye and he turns Kama into ashes. Parvati, and the goddess, goes and tells Shiva, please don't do this. Please revive him. And so Shiva says, okay, but I'm going to revive him without a body. What he didn't realize is that disembodied karma is more powerful than an embodied karma, because now he's immanent. He's everywhere. He's infused everywhere. He's all pervading. And you can't see him because he doesn't have a body. So this is the nature of karma and in Indian philosophy, it said that karma is the most powerful energy. It is more powerful than intellect, more powerful than any energy. And yet, there are many philosophies which came later, which says you can master karma. But what happens is karma becomes transformed into many different things. It becomes to likes on social media. It was our escaping into holidays. It becomes our escaping presence in many different ways, you know, through the next job, through the next relationship, through something else. And so this is this pervasive karma that continues to move and pervade everywhere. So in ancient traditions, pre-existed many of the more kind of masculine mind-dominated traditions, pleasure, the site of enquiry was pleasure. And aesthetics or art, that's the dynamics of pleasure. And so artistic enquiry, everything that was artistic was an invocation, was an enquiry. Right? Dance, visual arts, cave paintings, whatever, they were all enquiries. They were all invocations. They were not recording what was going on around them, but they were manifesting their enquiry. And they were manifesting that enquiry because in manifesting it, they share that teaching with the others. And that's what these dancers did too. In manifesting these deities, in manifesting what are called rasas or sensations or feelings, of feeling constellations, they allowed other people to also experience that, to experience that same divinity, that same enquiry, that same teaching. So this was the purpose of the artistic enquiry, was pleasure. And why is pleasure so potent is because the mind loves pleasure. It's a fallacy to say that we will stop the mind from not being addicted to pleasure. It is the nature of the mind to want comfort, to want pleasure, to want beauty, to want to see beautiful things, to want to experience our sensations. And all of this is celebrated in the dance. And the dance says, let us locate our inquiry in the body, sensations, and we, the divine, in our body, in our the mind comes along rather than brutality to aesthetic artistic constellation. This was the purpose. When they say that people, it's their swabhava, it's just innate in people to enjoy dancing. It's not a throwaway line. It's very deliberate. It is because of that that dance and music and the arts were the inquiry. So that is Shiva's dance. So how does all this connect with nature and with earth and nature goddesses and nature as divine and nature consciousness? So I'm going to speak about this in two parts. The first, talking about it as, there are so many ways to approach this, so many ways, because just everything is about evoking nature. But I'm going ways of speaking about this or sharing some reflections with you. And one is through feeling. And in the Indian dance, it's called rasa. Rasa is the purpose of dance, and rasa is really one of the very well-known philosophies, aesthetic philosophies. And Natya Shastra or dance was the origin of rasa, aesthetic philosophy, which then became much more developed as literary aesthetics in India. So rasa became much more concerned about poetics and literature and drama, but the origin of it is in the Natya Shastra text, where rasa earliest mentioned. So what is rasa? There are 8 rasas in the Natya Shastra, and these rasas are Sringara, pleasure, beauty, love, attraction, fear, which is laughter, you know, just any kind of laughter and comedy. It's usually parody, that sort of comedy, hasya, uh, hasya karuna, which is pathos or compassion, um, uh, rage, fury, veera, which is heroic, warrior, that's in strength, heroism. I have to say the verse, right? Remember them in order. Sringara, Hasya, Karuna, Raudra, Veera, Bhayanaka, which is fearsome, Bhibhatsa, which is revulsion, Adbhuta, wonder. So these are the 8. Now there is a 9th one which came much later, but these are the 8 in the Natya Shastra. And these rasas are not simply the feelings attached to the stories that we have, because each rasa has a particular deity. For example, in Raudra, the deity is Raudra, which is fury. The deity is Rudra. And Rudra, the deity, is elemental. So in fact, they say of Rudra that you can't even take his name. We don't know if it's his, her, animal, but not even to take the name, because there is no form. You don't label. Don't you dare label me, is Rudra's invitation. But Rudra is the storm, is the lightning, is the howl of the wolves at night. Um, is that elemental rage in nature. So so these rasas are much more elemental, and they're connected to another layer called the sthayis, which are, for example, Raudra is connected to Krodha, which is anger. That is the anger that we feel in our lives. But when you move into the rasa, it becomes elemental. And what's elemental is connected to the way in which nature is experienced as sensation. Three big bands of sensation in nature are called the gunas. And they are sattva, which is the energy of contemplation, the energy of spirituality, the energy of thought, of thinking. So that is sattva. Rajas, which is the energy of action, doing things, making things, action. And tamas, which is the energy of mystery, the unknown, the dark, what is not seen. So these are the energies in nature. So nature is experienced as in terms of their sensations. And these rasas are connected to this way of experiencing nature. So you can see how there is this flow from body to the elements of nature. So a feeling is not just a feeling in our body that is all about us and our story and what's going on, but the invitation of the rasa is that everything that we feel has an there in the movement of nature, in the it is there in the movement of the leaves on the trees. It is there in a bird song. And so that invitation is to connect with nature, not as a story, because the minute we say a story, there is I and there is the nature. So again, we are this movement of this elemental feeling is you become Rudra, the storm, because that's what Rudra is, the storm, the lightning, the howling of the movement of the howling of the wolf. So, so this is that invitation to go from that limited sense of separation of me, my story, my feeling, to something that is more elemental and more expansive. And again, I just have to say, I'm not saying feelings at our psychological level, they're not important. Of course, they're important. Again, multiplicity. Everything is fine. Let's just have this as well. Let's just have also this possibility, this expansive experience. But, see the time. Okay, the second way is a practice called Chatushpada. And this is something I've been doing recently with the women that are in my group courses. And so it just came to me to share this. And Chatushpada literally means four-footed, but it also means four states of consciousness. So Dripada, which is what we are, two-footed. So that's two states of consciousness. And that means it's always duality. So it is good and bad, black and white, me and nature, you and me, all the separations. That is Dvipada. Chatushpada, the four-footedness, is the four dimensions of consciousness. And Chatushpada, I'm going to show you a few movements of Chatushpada. Chatushpada is the way of invoking the animals in the dance. So it is not imitating the animal. It's not acting like the animal, but there is a way in which the animal is transformed into movement, which creates a very different experience in the body. There is a point at which you have to do it. I'm not going to make you do this, but that's what I'm saying to you is seeing is one thing, but then doing is something else. So let me show you an example. And I'm going to show this in two ways, so that you can see how in the dancing, it also takes on the experience of rasa. So I'm going to show you the horse, but I'm going to share with you from the martial art tradition, Kaladipayattu, and what is the Ashva Vadiva, or the horse in that tradition. Okay. So you see at 4 points of my body, I have put weight pressed into the ground, and my whole body is along the ground. So I'll try and it's difficult to do it. It's completely moving along the ground, and there's a propulsion in my body. So it's not that I am controlling that movement. The weight is actually, I have to really allow the weight to move me along the body. And similarly, so let me do something from dance, which is a slightly different experience. So in dance, for example, there is a movement called Gangavatarana, which is the descent of the river Ganga. And this, this is not strictly an animal movement, but it has that Chatushpada element of pressing into the ground. So those are the two variations of this movement. Again, pressing into the ground, and then it's like the lower body, the water is about to flow over the head. So another example is a lion. This is from dance again. So the Chatushpada, which is that really going into the ground with the weight, in dance, you have to, you hold that sensation of the weight. Whereas in Kalari, you've got that much more literally with both hands down, that four-footedness. So in dance, the weight has to really play that weight of taking along the ground. So the lion, so it's Simha Karshita. Karshita is to plow into the ground. So it's like you're holding a plow with your foot and you're digging into the ground as you walk. And you allow your weight. So as I'm moving, it's really my weight. It's really my weight in my lower body that is propelling me forward. So in other words, I'm actually being propelled along by the lower body. And one of the things they say in dance is that movement begins with the chari, which means the part of the body from here, weight downward. The movement begins with that weighted, because of course in Indian dance, the body is always weighted down. And it's not just bend the knee, but it's actually, your hips are like a full pot of water. And it's like the pot of water pulls you down. So that there's weight here. And then to move with the weight, you take the weight, and there is a point at which you have to co-create with the weight. There is this collaboration. It's not me controlling it, but I have to, and it's the same with the Kalari as well. You have to just have that co-creative relationship, that collaborative relationship with the weight and that momentum. It's like you're straddling gravity, that movement, and then you're moving along. So it's actually an experience in the body. It's not a thought, it's not a theory, but it's a bodily experience of how this works. What does co-creation mean? And Chatushpada is very much about this co-creative, collaborative experience. And this constellation of 4 dimensions, it's so beautiful. It's also connected to, for example, the healing. So in Ayurveda, they say Chatushpada, which is the healer, the person who is sick, the attendant, and the medicine. So this is the Chatushpada. And so the attendant as well. So the invitation of Chatushpada is always an awareness of what else is there. And sometimes it might be something that you have totally disregarded. You might totally think the attendant has no importance at all. And yet in dance, the attendant has a lot of importance. The friend of the deity or the friend of the male or the female deity is a very important role. They take messages between each other, but they also have this role of contemplating on what's going on. They might even be very insightful. They can critique things that are going on. So they have a really important role, and yet they are the messenger, or they are like the friend of the goddess or the friend of the god. And so the attendant. And, you know, I'm working with this beautiful woman. Her name is Kuwaini, and she's given me permission to speak about her today. She's a ritual artist. She's a visual artist, and she works with ritual art. And so we've been working together on developing a dance practice for her so that she can come from a more embodied space in her work. And she's from Sri Lanka. She's of Sri Lankan heritage. And she was just telling me about how in her culture, when somebody has a snake bite, they send the messenger, because the person with the snake bite can't go to the healer. So they send the messenger, and the messenger receives the treatment, and the person is healed. And this happened even recently with someone she was working with in Sri Lanka, where this constellation is in play. And so this is, this is not something of the mind, and so we dismiss it, we don't take it on board, and yet this constellation is proposing a much more expansive, a multidimensional experience of reality. And I think that's also where dance has a really powerful role to play, is in, because what dance proposes is that reality is multidimensional, that reality, every moment in reality holds infinite possibilities. It's not just either or. It's not just templates of the past redone again and again and again and again. How many times are we going to do it? We've been doing it for centuries. It's not just repeating them, improving them marginally and rolling them out again. But there is a radical proposition. Presence is very radical. And I think J. Krishnamurti is a philosopher that I really inspires me a lot. And he uses the word radical. He says, spirituality is radical, presence is radical. Because what presence is proposing is that every moment holds infinite possibilities. And there is, like the attendant, there is a lot that we might not even think is important, but which holds the key, but which holds that movement, which holds that intelligence and that wisdom, and where the healing is going to happen. Even our healing might be happening through that attendant. And so this is that Chatushpada intelligence, which in dance becomes something that is completely embodied. So to finish, I just want to say, again, go back to Earth, and I want to share with you the invocation, one of the oldest invocations to Earth, which comes from the Atharva Veda. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Vedas, but there are 4 Vedas in India, which are some of the oldest sources of spiritual and philosophical traditions. The Atharva Veda is sometimes considered to be a lesser or a minor text, but in fact, Atharva Veda holds some of the pre-Vedic traditions in the Atharva Veda. And rasa, for example, the rasa in Natya Shastra comes from Atharva Veda. So there is a lot about arts and embodied practices, that wisdom is in the Atharva Veda. And I think it's because we don't value embodied traditions that we also dismiss Atharva Veda. But this invocation to Earth is it's a beautiful one, and it's really invoking the Earth in that sensation, feelingful sort of domain. So the Earth, what supports the Earth? Satyam, which is truth, but truth as an unfolding movement of reality. Not truth as a statement or a fact, but truth as the unfolding movement of reality is Satyam. Brihad, which is expansive, vast. Ritam. Ritam is the movement of reality as it is. It's not something we have created. It is something like the tree that just happens. That is Ritam. Ugram, ferocity. And this is something we've lost as well. Spiritual traditions, including Indian tradition, we've lost ferocity. And the planet Earth in astrology, in Jyotisha, in Indian astrology, is an Ugra planet, ferocious planet. So when she became Gaia, when she moved away from the older, so many of the ancient goddesses were very ferocious warrior goddesses. And these are the pre-Vedic goddesses. I'm talking before Kali and Durga. They are the ancestresses of Kali and Durga. And these goddesses were not because they are war goddesses, but they are, that warlike ferocity is the ferocity of Earth. Ugram. So she was not Mother Earth, going to tolerate everything, but she was very ferocious. Ugram, Diksha. Diksha, which is initiation, that intentional initiation. considering movement, life as ritual, that initiatory approach. Tapas is that focus, passionate heat. Tapas is about heat. It's about the passion, the heat of the focus. Mantra, which is word that comes from embodied presence, that comes from the body. So Brihaspati, for example, one of the again, a pre-Vedic deity, is also the Lord of the sacred word, but word that comes from that body-led consciousness. Mantra, yajna. Yajna is offering. So the biggest word here is yajna. The earth is in yajna. Everything in the earth is in yajna. And yajna is offering / sacrifice. So it is a sacrifice because it is an offering without any expectation, not profit, not loss. So therefore, for the mind, it's a sacrifice. So offering yajna, these support the earth. And may she, the Patini is consort, but it's also the queen of time past and future, make the world abundant, expansive for us. So I want to just end with the dance constellation movement for yajna. And I hope you can, I invite you to open your heart and just sense this rasa of this movement. So this is everything in the earth, every animal, every plant, every stone is in yajna. So are we, if we can just turn towards that yajna. So here's the movement of yajna. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And you're meditating, and it's an individual thing, that is connecting holistically. Is there a dance within, or is there a dance out of each?
So it's the thing with the proposition of dance is that you even dissolve the duality of within and without. So it's immanence rather than transcendence. So it's how you experience the divine as within the body, but that body is also the earth. It's so for example, the word for the body in some of these pre-Vedic traditions is kshetra. And kshetra means a field or a site. So this is kshetra, the earth is kshetra, the cosmos, the sky is kshetra. So when we say body, we mean all of that. And so when we say Shiva is the cosmos, there's, Shiva's body is, Shiva's body is invoked as the cosmos. So the sun and the moon are his ornaments. But that's not just a symbol, it's an experience. So the dance of Shiva is a practice and an experience. And I think what's really, the reason why I really say immanence and not transcendence is because, and actually there is a German philosopher called Jung Han. I hope I'm saying his name right. He has written really insightfully on um, many things, but one of the things he writes about is how we have, over centuries, we have really said materialism is a bad thing. So the body is bad, everything material is bad. And we've gone more and more and more into this information. It's become this, kind of disembodied information. And he speaks about how this, so a lot of religion said that, even Indian religion said, let's not, don't have too much material, don't be attached to the material, don't be attached to your body. But what it's done is it's kind of left us without any tethering. Instead we've got this information cloud, which, literally we've got the clouds now, cloud in, and he speaks about this and he writes beautifully about this. And what is amazing about these pre-Vedic traditions is that the material is immanent, immanent. And so the body is infused with the divine, as is the stone, as is the earth, as is the tree. So it's not the transcending, but it is that returning to claim that immanence. Everything is the center. So there is no center. It's like if I am the earth, if I am the constellations, and this is where even astrology came from. The constellations are mapped in the body first. So it is from the body that astrology came. So it's everything that is there is in the body. And this is there in the chakras too. It's doing the same thing. The divinities are in the body. Yeah. But then even yoga talks a lot about transcending. But here it's about immanence of the body. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah. Thank you.
So we have to claim our own divinity. And a lot of people don't claim the divinity because of the whole materialistic is bad and therefore you can't own your body and you have to transcend past it.
Yes,
But we have to claim it back, is what you're saying, I think.
absolutely. Because if we don't recognize the divinity of our body, how are we going to recognize the divinity of earth? Because our body is of the soil. We are made of the soil. And that is this, when I was sharing the Chatushpata practice, it actually says in the dance, it says, bow your head in humility towards the ground, because we are off the ground. Just like those four-footed animals or the lizards, we are off the ground. It's that returning back to that. Maybe it's for the Zoom people. I hope they can hear the question. I hope the Zoom. Yep.
My question was, when I came in here, I hurt my back earlier today, and I came in here, and I had a sore back, and I was watching as you were moving. I could feel the movement inside my own body, and by the time you were done, I didn't have pain in my back anymore. And how I was just wondering, like, how would you explain that? Because I can understand dance, when you're doing it, how the effect it would have on your body and your mind, but just watching, yeah, that, yeah, question.
So this is the rasa experience. So the rasa experience is, like I said, it's collaborative, it's co-creative. And if the dancer is holding the rasa, and they say, they use this word sattva. Sattva is essence. So the sattva is the state that you begin dance with. It's the beginning, it's the foundation. And that state is where you are free from the known. That's a beautiful phrase that Krishnamurti uses again and again, freedom from the known. You come in without past, without what you know, without I am this person, I'm that person, all those stories. And you are just the site of the you're the kshetra of the manifestation of what you're invoking. And that manifestation is not what you will know, because the divine is infinite. So it's not like you're going to know, if you know the story and you're just going to enact the story, how is that divine? So whatever is, infinite possibilities. And those who come into this, it's not a performance. I really don't want to call it a performance. This invocation, those who come open to rasa will experience the same rasa. So this was the rasa experience, that those who come, and that was the tapas, all those diksha, intention. So it's important to have that intention. If you come with the intention, the openness, then you have the experience of that same rasa. But also in terms of neuroscience, there's been a lot of work about neuroscience and dance. And there's been work on mirror neurons, for example. I mean, some of you may know this. And apparently, if you watch dancing for your body, it is as if you are dancing. It's the same thing. So it's like the rasa, this technology of rasa knew that, because that is exactly what they're proposing. That can happen. But they're also proposing it that it happens at a sensation level.
Padma, I was particularly interested in your example of Mount Meru and the churning of the Milky Ocean. And I've always associated that with the Milky Way and a sense of the cosmos as a sublime dance. And so seeing that churning as a form of dance, it brings out the spiritual dimension of dance. And so there's this sense within dance of the connection of spirit and nature, and I suppose a challenge to how our society has separated spirit and nature.
Absolutely. Robert, it's like the separation is manifold, isn't it? The human is separate from everything else. And we've now given ourselves the place of the Anthropocene, which is outside of everything else. And in the Atharva Veda, the verse I shared with you, it very clearly said that the earth is capable of, she is completely powerful, taking care of her own movement, her own manifestation, and she has done so many times. So there is absolutely the fact that the earth pre-exists our mind, and our body pre-exists the mind. And so when we are considering what is that space that is beyond the mind, so this is never a denial of the mind. Unlike the mind-dominated philosophies, which actually said the body is lesser and the body must be denied and rejected, it is never that the mind is not divine. So in these traditions, the mind is the divine masculine. And the mind that turn towards the body is the mind in its rightful place. So I suppose what I'm saying is that this separation between body and mind, between human and not human, between us and the earth, between countries, the separation is so thick and it's manifold. And how we can speak about unity without having a space that can really take us right out of all these paradigms and say, we have a different way, a different perception. And that's that body-led perception.
We often speak of dances as being graceful, and that concept of being graceful is something that it connects to being full of grace. And a grace is something that brings together spirit and nature. So, so in the dance, you're bringing together spirit and nature into a state of grace.
And ferocity, and sensuousness, and grief. So all of that is there. Every movement, nothing that we experience is something that shouldn't happen. It is all part of the movement. And the inquiry is that multidimensionality without any categorization. And again, that's not to say, or does that mean we all are going to be immoral? And no, there is a place for all that. But if we don't have that expansive, multidimensional perspective, we also don't realize the place of these paradigms that we have created to organize ourselves. But those things are not absolute. That there is earth, there is nature, there is even our body. We don't have to go very far. Even our body, that is a mystery to us. And alchemy starts with the body. And that's very much in these traditions. The alchemy is in the body.
Dance has got this mindful dimension of being very conscious of the body and present in the body as something that is quite spiritual. It's not, as you were saying, it's a spirituality of, um, you were saying it's not a spirituality of language, but of experience, I suppose.
Yeah. The broadest sense of spirituality.
I'd like to take us back to you were talking about the body and the earth having its own ferocity and capacity for its own self. The concept of intention in dance, you talk about the rasa coming. The intention's not necessarily our own, is it? It's the earth manifesting through the intention at that moment. And we're kind of manifesting or emanating the intention of the earth that's unknowable and unspeakable through the dance. Am I on the right? Is that the sort of thing that we're talking about in that? And if so, can you talk more about that? Because I found that fascinating.
So the intention is yajna. So there is only one intention when you come into dance, and that is yajna, that is offering, which is the sacrifice, because you sacrifice what you know, and you are there in the unknowable. So that is always the intention. And that is because the earth is yajna. She is offering. She is sacrificing. Every aspect of earth is offering and sacrificing. If you look at the animals, if you look at the trees, if you look at the plants, they are offering. And even the idea that we die, we go back to soil, that is the sacrifice. So there is this, again, this death sacrifice, this death as the sacrifice ritual, which was a very big part of these traditions. And sometimes people dismiss it and call them death cults, which is such a derogatory way of dismissing, this wisdom of this big event that happens to every one of us. The sacrifice yajna is the intention. And in that intention, we match Earth's yajna, and we match the yajna of everything around us. And it is really transformative to when we are in those moments. I think the philosopher Peter Kingsley speaks about where the cosmic becomes intimate. And it is absolutely that experience of, the cosmic does become intimate.
Padma, that was wonderful. Thank you. It was terrific. And I guess I've just got a comment. I'm not well schooled in Christianity, I like should be, I guess, but I'm not. but well, you know, but your tradition is so much richer. It seems we like Christianity. I don't know if you've looked closely at Christianity, but it just doesn't. There just don't seem to be the parallels and the things you're talking about. I, well, I don't think there's a, a tradition of dance that goes along with Christianity, or the manifestation of how the importance of the body. And um, anyway, that was just my comment. Is that you know it just seems to be a much richer, more balanced tradition that does have this way out of that binary, or to acknowledge um, both sides of the binary rather than being too one-sided. Or
So I think my sense of it, I definitely am not, I'm not an expert in it, but I'm also not an expert on Christian philosophy. And so, but there's some things that I know, um, I feel that there are uh, the mystical traditions in many of these philosophies do speak of embodied spirituality. Um, but having said that, I have to say that even in India, many of the mainstream philosophy, um, while there is this richness, this idea of dance as a philosophical inquiry is not so alive. I'm not saying there aren't people doing it, and there are amazing dancers doing that, but it is certainly not the mainstream practice of dance. And the mainstream religions in India, I think, would still espouse that the body is something to be suspicious about, that the senses are something to withdraw from, and that kind of asceticism, which again J. Krishnamurti called brutality. So that is still part of the many of the mainstream traditions still. So I feel like it's not really about particular traditions, but I feel it's more about the movement across the world, um, from these kind of body-led intelligence to mind-led intelligence. I think there was a movement, and other people have written about this, there was a movement across the world, and almost around the same time, there was this shift from, and generally it was kind of coincided with the shift from goddess-led kind of philosophies and traditions to more male deities, more text-based, more intellectual traditions. So it was, I feel like it's kind of reflected in many different cultures across the world. And I feel it's probably something to do, and actually in some of the Indian texts, this is almost anticipated. The texts say that this movement of consciousness is almost an inevitability, that we will move into this mind-dominated, mind-led. And in fact, some texts have described in great detail exactly where we are today. It's amazing, the detail. It's not even just, vague predictions, but in detail about what's going on, the divisions in society and what's going on. And these are very ancient texts. So there is a sense in which there's a movement of consciousness which brings us to where we are. And I think there is an arc which is perhaps inevitable, but I feel like it's still a gift that we have these other possibilities, especially in this moment in our history, that we do have these other possibilities.
I was just going to say, as another way of looking at that art, we've got a very science-based, materialistic or secular society where a physicalist society, where we take the universe to be physical and science is our dominant method or whatever. And what you were saying about creating that space, that at the beginning, how we devalue the role of art, and that creating that space is where time is, where you experience immortality because you're absorbed in a flow, or time stands still, or you know, the process of producing art creates a space, and it is the space that's created that is important, because you know that is a process of soul making, or as other people have, you know, put it. And just, you know, that we have that kind of dichotomy in society at the moment, you know. um,
Yes, and again, there are wonderful philosophers that have spoken about the mechanistic lives. You know, there's been a lot of writing, especially recently, about mechanistic ways of living, um, and the perils. So that's what you're alluding to, that mechanistic, mind-dominated. And again, all of these have place. Science has a place, everything has a place, but we've lost this other possibility, that possibility of immortality.
I just wanted to say that with with our pursuits of the mind, we're starting to bring spirituality back, although we're not calling it spirituality, we're calling it mindfulness and stuff. Do you think there's a way to turn that arc around to reclaim the things that we've lost on the way and to bring it back to where it should be?
Yeah, through body-led practices. So it's not enough. I mean, embodying anything is wonderful. Let me be very clear. Any dance is better than no dance. Anything embodied is better than no embodiment. But this is more than just embodying. This is body-led. So we're not really manifesting the roadmap of a template of the mind, but here, like I said, we are opening up to a completely different intelligence. So this kind of dance, this kind of technology is a very different intelligence. It's not simply, that's where we say, come, you know, the yajna is leave, come into that, leave everything you know. That's really leaving those roadmaps and allowing that body to lead. And there is amazing intelligence in the body. And the intelligence of that body in these kind of dance traditions that is the technology of that intelligence. And it's very much something real. It's not a fantasy. And I think part of the challenge is that many of these traditions have been appropriated sometimes, and they've lost that knowledge base, that ritual knowledge base. And because when you look at something, you don't often, simply by looking, you don't often experience that intelligence. You really need to be doing it, and you need to also have people that actually know that multidimensional intelligence of the form, because it can be any, like I said, for the Ashuras, the dance was, you know, something they enjoyed, was entertaining, but it was the Suras who got something else from the dancing. So sometimes it's not what it looks like, but it's what it holds. And so again, there is that constellation of teacher, of somebody who's open to rasa, the form that is then being approached, encountered with that yajna body. So that yajna body is really important, because otherwise it's just a dance. Now, everything I did can also be done as a dance, and nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful. But when you encounter it with a yajna body, then something else opens up about that dance. So yeah, body-led is the answer.
I'd just like to finish up now because Padma wants to be out of here. Sorry.
Thanks very much, Padma. Would you comment on the Aboriginal culture? Because, of course, we've become more conscious of it now, and we're asking ourselves, what have they got to show us to recover a more earth-oriented attitude? But it seems to me that they're very much connected to the earth, and their dance patterns seem to be connected to the earth. Their dreamtime stories come out of the earth. Um, is there some way that they can show us the movement back to the balance that we need?
I absolutely think that in this land, we are living amongst wisdom and intelligence that absolutely can show us the way back. I don't know very much about, I've had the privilege of doing some of the dancing and meeting some of the dancers, but I'm not going to be claiming to be the person that knows about it. But certainly I sense that, the soul of this land and how the people here, the first people here, the First Nations people, connect to the land is a technology like this. I say that with all humility, but absolutely, we have that in our own land, and I feel it every time. So when I invoke the deities of the lands, I'm invoking their deities, and my gratitude is the permission that I have, and this is this beautiful multiplicity. The permission that I have to invoke my deities and to do this dance here. And every time I walk on Mount Majura, I feel the generosity of this earth and the land. It's absolutely incredible. And the connection that, that I'm allowed to feel connection to this land. It's a great honor.
Thank you very much, Padma.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Padma, don't run away yet. This is a presentation we'd like to make you. Just to say thank you very much. We really appreciated your efforts tonight. I think everyone's got so much from it, and we always love having you coming. It's just so beautiful to have you, and we've got something special for you to say thank you to Mother Earth. And don't run away, and be a friend to us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I want
Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone here, the ladies.
So may I just thank you, Jean and Robert, yes, for all these years of friendship and
And I will come online now.
Yeah.
To do the dance.
And I just want to thank all of you on Zoom here for allowing me to share my reflections. This is my practice in talking about the dance. I know it's never the same thing as doing the dance, but thank you for allowing me and for being patient with my attempts to make dance into words.
No, it's fabulous. And thank you very much. We just love having you. Yes. Also, before you run away, we have on the 3rd of June,